Oh, welcome back to the Hot Mic Show. I'm Bill Whittle, talking today about Generation Snowflake, this entire cohort, the millennial cohort of young adults now who've never been given a chance to get past their fifth year of emotional development. They've been given everything and coddled and pampered, and they're turning into a real issue in our society, which is going to get much worse before it gets any better. And our guest today is Dr. Everett Piper. He's the president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University, and he's written a book called Not a Daycare: The Devastating Consequences of Abandoning Truth. You know, Dr. Piper, a lot of people look at these kids like some of the ones we saw earlier acting out, and they feel a tremendous amount of hostility towards them, and I'm guilty of that myself. I have to grab myself and stop myself and say that these millennials didn't do this to themselves. They didn't determine how they were going to be raised. They didn't decide whether or not to keep score. This was done to them. So could you comment on this? A couple of weeks ago, a University of Georgia professor said that if you are uncomfortable with the grade that you get in my class, you can change the grade to whatever grade you think is appropriate in order to reduce your emotional stress. Now, it turns out that University of Georgia eventually reversed that. But the fact that a professor could make a claim like that is an indication of where the problem really is.
It's absurd. And I would argue that my industry, higher education, our colleges and universities, the academic enterprise, my industry created this monster. And frankly, a lot of people are pulling me aside behind closed doors. They don't want to admit it publicly, but there are many professors and even college presidents that agree with my critique. They're pulling me aside and saying, I wish I would have said it. I wish I could say it. I wish I could challenge our snowflakes. I wish I could say that this is a university. It's not a daycare, as you have. I agree with you, but I can't speak out publicly. We've created this monster, and it's turning around to bite us, and it's frightening us. One poster child is of this particular reality is a hard copy letter that I received from a university in the South that everybody would recognize. It was from a Fulbright scholar. He introduced himself as an atheist and somebody that disagreed with my quote-unquote religion and my politics. He said he dismissed both of those, but then he said, on this matter, thank you, kudos to you, please carry on, thank you for saying it. This scholar, this academic individual, this academician realized that the monster he had created through this self-absorption and this narcissism, this focus on feelings rather than facts, was turning around and biting him, and it was threatening the very academic liberty that he cherished.
And what a perfect segue for my next question, because politically left-wing professors created these students, and we're hearing anecdotally more and more and more every day that they've now become terrified of these kids. They're actually scared of them, and they realize that they've created a monster, but of course the monster they created was out of virtue signaling, and you can't stop signaling your virtue by saying we made a horrible mistake. Do you get that sense that academics in colleges are actually afraid of these students? Well, I think they must be, right? Because the universities keep backing down.
In some measure, they are, and it's because of the authority structure and just the organization that doesn't support their academic liberty any longer. It's become, as I said, it's become an institution of ideological fascism rather than one of academic freedom, where the power and the control and the common bond of the fascist will crush you and break you and expel you and silence you if you don't comply. Antithetical to the classical liberal arts model, as I suggested. The solution is to return to the time-tested truths. I've said it earlier in your program. The words of Christ, to veritas, truth, Latin for truth. That's a word that's on Oxford's shield some 1,000 years after its founding. Why? It's because that's the only context for truth. Chesterton told us that when you get rid of big laws, you don't get liberty, but rather thousands of little laws that rush in to fill the vacuum. He also told us that if you want freedom, build a fence. In other words, there is no, it's the paradox of discipline and freedom. You have no freedom if you don't discipline yourself to the rules of the game. You can't play a sport if you don't understand the rules, and if you don't understand the coach and the plays and memorize it and practice and discipline yourself to what it takes to be an athlete. We have not taught our kids this. We've patted them on the back and on the head, and we've treated them like precious little snowflakes, and they're acting that way because they don't understand the magic of adversity, of where there's no pain, there's no gain.
Yeah, that's well said also, the magic of adversity. Now we're getting down to the bare metal here, Dr. Piper. because the subtitle of your book is the devastating consequences of abandoning truth. And essentially that's what the entire purpose of this education and this self-esteem movement and everything that the left has foisted on us has been for. It's taken them two generations, almost three, but they've really gotten there. They have gotten to the idea where the truth is something that's a personal opinion. There is no external truth, and you can say somebody, well, this is the truth, or this is a fact, or it's recorded, and they'll say, well, that's your truth. You don't really understand the meaning of the word, do you? You can have your own opinions, but not your own facts. They utterly negate it. And my point is, this is essentially what these socialists have to do, right? They have to inculcate in these adult children the idea that you can't make any decision, you can't make any kind of a distinction, any kind of a discrimination, you can't say anything is better than anything else. And if you can't say that anything is better than anything else, then you really truthfully have to go through this double think of saying that this lump of clay that I just dumped on the table is in fact precisely equal to Michelangelo's David. They're both works of art, and who am I to say that one of them is better than another?
Spot on. That's exactly where we are right now. We've dumbed down the definition of every word, of every idea, to nothing but a construct and an opinion. There's no fact any longer, even to the point where we can't even define what a male and a female is. For example, what could be more misogynistic than to tell a woman that she's not real? But that's exactly where we are as a culture right now. We are being told that females are not biological facts, but they're fantasies and fabrications. They're nothing but make-believe, unicorns and leprechauns. And that anytime a dysphoric male raises his hand and says, I am one, and I want to pretend to be female, he can take away the dignity, he can take away the very identity of a woman by taking her privacy and her bathroom and her shower and her sport and her scholarship. That is misogynistic. That is not feminism. The conservative, the guy who believes in conserving the time-tested truths, the objective definitions of those things that are obvious and factual, of biology and physiology. The conservative is the one who is classically more feminist and pro-woman and liberal, if you will, than my left-of-center counterpart today.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it occurred to me quite a long time ago that what it is conservatives are conserving is liberalism, classical liberalism. Just a final question for you, Dr. Piper. These kids have been coddled and taken care of all their lives. They go into universities, they make demands of the university. The university bends over backwards to accommodate their demands, which is based on whims and microaggressions and all the rest. Now they're moving out into the workforce, and now there are professionals who explain to employers how to deal with these children and how you must treat them very gently and so on. What's going to happen to these adult infants when their parents die? I don't see any possible way they have the strength to take care of their parents. When is reality going to catch up with them, do you think? And it's not going to be pretty, is it?
It's not going to be pretty, and I would argue reality will catch up at the point of crisis. And all of us face crisis. None of us grow until we face that dissonance, until there is iron sharpening iron, until the Lord disciplines those he loves. All these axioms point to the same thing, that if there's no pain, there's no gain. When our culture faces crisis, these kids are going to have to act like adults and not children any longer. In closing, I'd say C.S. Lewis told us of the great lion Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia, that he wasn't safe, but he was good. I'll paraphrase that. The great lion of the liberal arts, of the academy, of the ivory tower, the great lion of the church, of the courts, of our community, of our culture, of our country, is not supposed to be safe. It's supposed to be good. I would much rather have good education than safe education, because that's what will train up a generation of adults rather than snowflakes.
That is, in fact, entirely the purpose of a university education, is to confront everything you believe and allow you to do the fire assay that's going to allow you to sift the lead from the gold. This is Dr. Everett Piper, ladies and gentlemen. He is he's the president at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. He's got a book out called Not a Daycare, The Devastating Consequences of Abandoning Truth. He's an actual educator. There's at least one of them in America. Thank you very much, Dr. Piper, for being with us again today.
I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
This is where we are, and this is the consequences of what we've done. The question is, can it be reversed? Can it be reversed? I suspect it probably can. I suspect it can. I suspect that if you took any one of these cry bullies and put them into Marine boot camp, that they would have much more trauma than people from previous generations, but I absolutely do believe that when they were finished, they would come out as adults. They would have to suffer, as Dr. Piper said, they'd have to get to the point where iron meets iron. But this idea that by protecting people from emotion is what makes them strong is insane. I think the best analogy I can think of is this. If you have a child and you love this child, and the child can't swim, you have two choices. You can make sure that every single body of water that's more than 2 feet deep is completely roped off, barricaded, lifeguarded, surveyed, all the rest of it. You can make sure that that kid never, ever comes anywhere near water again, doesn't walk over a bridge, doesn't drive over a bridge, stays 100 miles, 100 yards away from water. You can protect your kid from drowning that way, or you can try. That obviously is not going to work. The other thing you could do is you could teach your kid how to swim. Right? I mean, you could just teach them how to swim, and then all of your problems are solved. You don't have to be everywhere all the time. It's a depressing world out there sometimes, but there's hope. So we'll be back. Thanks very much for joining us on the Hot Mike Show. I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you tomorrow right here on NRATV.